Okay, so next up we have Alex of Xequals. And his talk here is Demystifying Digital Transformation, Embracing a New Generation of Thinking. Now, I had loads of stuff on Alex that's just kind of got messed up here, so that's cool. Quirky fact about Alex. He holds the unofficial office record for the longest continuous brainstorming session, 12 hours straight. So, I don't remember that. You don't know. It was a long time ago. But you've guaranteed that you'll do a 15 to 20 minute talk now. So, as the owner of Xequals, please welcome Alex.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Alex tōku ingoa, ko Matthews tōku hapu, ko whangarei tōku kāinga, ko whanganui atara tōku kāinga, ko hāte tōku awa, ko parihaka tōku moanga, ko digital innovation tōku mahi, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And I'm really aware I need to memorise digital innovation in te reo Māori. I'm sure those kupu exist, so forgive me, I'm going to make that my homework. Thanks for having me today. This is a little bit of an amazing moment for me because I never really thought I'd be in front of you all, despite the fact I've been sort of in the engine room in the skunk works doing a lot of the heavy lifting in GovTech for the past 15, 20 years. And today I'm going to be sharing with you insights, practical insights on what I think works and what doesn't, and trying to demystify not just digital transformation, but how to harness the power of the modern digital economy and the tools that it provides. Assume this is my clicker. Before I move on, though, I just want to quickly acknowledge Don. Amazing talk. And in my sort of 15 years of being actively involved in the ground level of open source communities in Wellington, Don has always walked the talk, always been there, always been an unspoken advocate for open source, always taken coffee when you need someone to talk to. Truly, deserving of that leadership position in our open source community. So thank you very much. And while I will take the title of being the king of, the king of proof of concepts, the truth is I don't like the term proof of concept. I think it's been muddied in the public sector because it often implies a throwaway. And I don't build throwaways. Anything that I rapidly prototype is the beginning of a full, extensible enterprise government platform. So I'd prefer the king of rapid prototyping or rapid development. Cool, moving on. So kia ora, I'm Alex. I'm the director of Xequals, a local software development company focused on open source solutions, the CEO of Frostflame Games, an indie game development company that produces board games and digital games. We just won a whole bunch of awards at the PAVs a few weeks ago, which was great. We've got the best board game in New Zealand, apparently. The organizer of the TEDx Wellington conference. Over a decade of organising local meetups, the Drupal meetups, the PHP, CSS, JavaScript, Python meetups. We've sponsored or been involved in them all. I'm a digital innovation columnist for The Post. It comes out once every 4 weeks, so keep an eye on that. I'm, I suppose, historically a cheerleader for the Kiwi IT sector, and I think that's actually what I'm doing today. Avid technologist, futurist, and digital product designer. And I'm most comfortable as a digital product designer. I do not remember that 12-hour brainstorming session, but I assume it was worth it, and was probably involved in designing some kind of platform. Now, I also want to just be honest that I'm breaking my own rule today. I don't normally believe in bullet point heavy presentations. I'm normally about the big picture and then putting the detail verbally, but I had so much substance that I wanted to share with you today, and I wanted it to be a standalone information resource. So I have gone for something which is quite information heavy. If you'd like a copy of it, let me know, and I do apologise, but I figured you're all serious people. The Govis conference is a serious conference. I'll still put a few memes and funny pictures in there, which is normally almost entirely what I would do. But instead of just having pure fun with this, I've decided to try and give you this substance. So first of all, I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know that if anyone suffers the day-to-day realities of GovTech, it is the frontline public service workers. I know you probably already sold on open source, on lean, on agile, on the things I'll be talking about today, and I don't mean to condescend you. I know that you're already there. I think the best way of interpreting my talk today is that I'm cheerleading for those of you who are actually taking risks, trusting each other to innovate, and doing it well, because we need a lot more of it. So, we all want, more for less, systems that are easier to maintain and support, harness the ecosystem of solved problems, aka open source, but also involves more than that, dramatically reduced time and wastage on projects. Now, we also want all the other things that come with good digital transformation: enhanced security, open data, input, output API systems, headless databases, agnostic front ends. We all want all the other things that come with good digital transformation, but I couldn't list them all. There's probably a good 100 of them. And why? Well, it's already been said today, but we can't afford to do things the old way. The cost is just too great. This has probably been conservative. New IT procurement is at least $2.6 billion per year. I saw some figures that were a bit larger than that. And keep in mind that that's just new IT procurement. That's on top of the other billions that are spent on ongoing business as usual operations. My guess, and if anyone's got the real number, please come and give it to me if you know better. My guess is that there's between $5 and $10 billion spent annually on IT and digital, and that's a significant percentage of our GDP. So I was able to dig up these facts. About 3% of procurement is currently going through the DIA marketplace. Multiple competing marketplaces, supplier panels. There's so many of them. You can have a full-time team just working on trying to be on them all. Transparency and trust in RFP processes and outcomes is very, very low. It's sort of gone through ebbs and flows over time, very much to the credit of procurement.government.nz. They do really good annual reporting on trust in the RFP process, and it's really interesting to look at how that's changed over the years. And right now, it's probably about as low as it's ever been. Large amounts of spending still end up with foreign multinationals, significant amounts of money. You can argue that we are just shops that print money for some of the most giant multinationals in the world. And we're not unique. We're the same as so many other countries that lack the confidence to do the other stuff, like open source, really, really, really well. And so we just keep writing blank checks to multinationals, which is really sad because it misses a whole bunch of opportunities. RFP processes remain a very time-consuming, expensive, inefficient, painful, unpopular process in both government teams and IT businesses. I know this for a fact because I've had beers with you. You've told me that you hate the RFP process, that you don't like business case development, that you know it's probably going to kill the project, that you're going to spend another year or two in trying to develop a business case. The team will probably resign halfway through. You'll end up with a 200-page document that doesn't have one single author or owner, no one even knows what's in the whole thing. It's had 18 different contributors after 100 different stakeholder meetings. And by the time it goes to market, it's no surprise that you get back a whole bunch of different competing quotes, none of which seem to align with each other. And it's just impossible to make sense of what a good direction forwards is. Now, I hear this all the time, and I've been involved in over 100 RFP responses. We've only just started winning them, but funnily enough, not in New Zealand. We've never won a New Zealand government RFP after probably 10,000 team hours spent over the past 15 years. Is New Zealand unique? No, the problem is global and really well documented. The World Bank, on average, thinks that about 80% of government IT projects either fail or create no or insufficient outcomes for their citizens. Now, New Zealand isn't that bad, fortunately. This is probably being generous, but about 40 to 45% of our IT projects are considered a success, or they weren't complete failures. I think it's being generous, but it's still fair to say that probably over half of government digital projects don't really meet their objectives or end up being wasted spends. There are countries that really lead the way. They've been spoken about, so I don't need to go into too much depth. But it is possible to do it well. We know that because we can look at countries overseas and we can see the benefits that comes with it. It's worth saying Australia is starting to attract attention. They were as bad as anyone for a while, but the past 10 or so years, they've really started to gain lots of attention, especially if you're doing open source really well. Come talk to me about GovCMS if you want. It's an open source system built by the Australian government, which I'm a huge fan of. So New Zealand does it better than some. We're not, the worst, but we're far from leading the way. And I know as passionate Kiwis, we all want to lead the world. So what's at stake? Oh, sorry, my designer said, what kind of memes should I include? And I said, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, that always seems to work. But I think she got a bit carried away, as we're about to see. So New Zealand's future as a leading democracy and digital export economy is what's at stake. It was said really well by Don, the best time to innovate or invest was 20 years ago. I totally agree with that. But we need to start doing it now so that when my daughter grows up, she'll inherit a great job in a thriving IT sector. So increased access to digital services. We all want this. There's lots of good reasons for that. improved efficiencies for citizens when dealing with government agencies. This drives better outcomes for citizens. If you can file your taxes online, as we currently can, really quickly, that's great. For some people in the world, that takes them days, if not weeks, and it's just wasted productivity. So we increase productivity to society as a whole when we get this right. We can save potentially billions of dollars. Percentages of our GDP can go back into the budget. And we can grow onshore capabilities in industry. And this is something I'm probably most passionate about because it leads to us growing our income, growing our revenue, and being able to develop new sort of revenue streams for the country. I think New Zealand can be a world leader, and I won't go into all the detail of it right now, but I think we've got almost everything we need to make this a reality. But there's a few missing pieces, and I think they're being discussed at this conference. So the opportunities are really profound. We can become renowned as a leader in GovTech services, products, platforms, and thought leadership and consulting. New Zealand and GovTech IT is the back office for the rest of the world, generate billions of dollars in new taxable revenues, but one does not simply innovate. Now, I would say, even though we've struggled to ever get attention in New Zealand's government, we are working for the United Nations, for the Pacific community of, I think, 45 different member nations across the Pacific, headquartered in New Caledonia. We provide this, we're sort of famous everywhere but in New Zealand, because the rest of the world is paying attention and understands how to innovate. This all sounds great, but how? I'm someone who always wants the answers and wants to get to the substance, not the rhetoric. So, it's not magical or mysterious. I'm not going to be telling you anything new today. These are all things that you already know. I'm just here to triple underline them and tell you that there are ways of strapping it all together and making it work practically by understanding how they work together. So, agile, lean, rapid prototyping, open source frameworks, open source cloud SaaS solutions. When you have these four things working together really nicely and you have the right people involved, it looks like magic, but it's not. It's not mysterious. We can do it, but we literally need to trust each other to innovate. And that means utilizing Kiwi innovation, startup mentality with fail fast, pivot fast methodology, update our risk assessment methodology. This is something I'd like to do a PhD on, but I won't have time, but I hope someone else does. Because I think this is how we actually change the Procurement Act and how we change policy, is by updating the way that we assess risks when it comes to procurement. Empower and reward good government worker decision making. I feel like there isn't enough of this. I feel like the public sector gets a lot of criticism for not doing things well, when we should be looking at doing perhaps the opposite and really celebrating it when it does it really well. So, what stops us? These are the common failure modes. And please humour me and raise your hand genuinely if you've been a victim to the following. Megalithic business case development cycles that require unreasonable amounts of information and take too long. Managers not understanding or trusting modern development that miss opportunities for new approaches that create value. Requirements gathering processes and traditional procurement that make agile projects practically impossible, favouring the incumbents. Okay, I feel as though most of the time there was at least half of the hands up in the audience, in some cases more, and that says a lot. So these are common failure modes. They're not unique to New Zealand, but these are the reasons why we don't innovate the way we'd like. So in practice, I can tell you, as a frontline innovator, it seems far easier for a government agency to risk a huge budget on a giant overseas company than it is to risk a very small budget on a local innovator. And that's kind of wild when you think about it. So our risk evaluation methodology needs updating. What about the risk of those traditional failure modes? They're very real. We can point to them. More than half of the projects that we invest in probably don't create the outcomes they were designed to. That's a waste of time and money, of your time, of my time, of all of our money. The risk of not embracing agile and lean project approaches. The risk of avoiding the local IT sector. What is it if we have an under-nurtured digital sector? The risk of not investing in our future. What does that mean for our children and grandchildren? Will they continue to move overseas because, the digital sectors overseas are more exciting to work in and pay better? the risk of outdated thinking and approaches, which I think lead to the kinds of processes we have currently, which lead to those common failure modes. So applying a risk management matrix to digital transformation, embracing startup thinking, avoid the Death Star approach, which is currently why so many things get blown up, rapid prototyping using agile, open source, SaaS, and cloud infrastructure, government workers empowered and trusted to innovate using these approaches rather than disincentivized through bureaucracy and process. I know that government agencies can do agile. It's possible. It's really hard to put it through procurement or structure it. It can be done, but it requires a lot of trust in the organization and a lot of maturity when it comes to understanding digital and web. So it's really important to acknowledge that failure is okay. If it's small, ring-fenced, it's learned from and informs a continuous deployment, continuous improvement structure in an agile setting. You shouldn't get to the end of a 2-year development program to suddenly realize that you failed or that you've got to start from scratch or a big thing didn't work. When you're doing agile and rapid development properly, you fail at least once a week, and that's okay. You learn from it, you adapt, you change, and you keep moving. But currently, I think the taller you are, the harder you fall is a metaphor that applies to a lot of government project structures. So being together, it turns out this works. Cutting, like that whanaungatanga, cutting through the stovepipes and having developers, designers, government leaders all in the same room building together. I joke, but it's not a joke, that me and my team, sitting in the room with a government team, can build a working platform as fast as they can describe it. I'm not kidding. We've got an example coming up. So I've witnessed the gradual sea change over time. I feel confident in sharing this information with you because I've got 20 years of hands-on personal experience in doing this. And I really mean that. I'm a full-stack developer, designer, project manager. I, to this day, remain hands-on with the tools, working with government teams, rapid prototyping in the room with my staff. Me and my business partner, Rox, have always believed that we have to have the full skill sets of our own team, of our own teams. So we're very, very technical leaders in that sense. We've participated in close to 100 government RFP processes, and the success failure modes to me are very, very, very obvious. I would say, for example, one of my many horror stories, probably about a third of the RFPs I've been involved in, they tell us, I'm sorry, you came very, very close, you were second or near the top, we really wanted to go with you, sounded great, you ticked all our boxes, but there was another provider, Microsoft's resellers, who we preferred to go with because it just felt easier for us and easier for procurement. And then, interestingly, they say, we'll give you a feedback round once we've gone to contract. And then I never hear back. And then I follow up and say, we'd love that feedback round. It'd be really helpful for us to know where we could have improved. 97 out of 100 points, great, but how did we get those extra 3? And they never come back to us. Or they say, I'm sorry, we never went to contract. And think about the years and all the people's time that went in developing the RFP process, and still somehow they never end up actually building anything. When contrast that with me and my team, we can build it as fast as it can be described. So we've watched the technology evolve over decades and the value points shift. 2024 is a different kind of year, thank you. I'm almost done. The open source technology has never been better. There's things I wouldn't have advised government do 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even a few years ago. The open source frameworks are getting better and better and better and better and better. It's like that moment when Android was suddenly a better operating system than a Nokia phone or a BlueBerry. We're seeing that happen right now when it comes to a lot of government digital platforms. But let's look at the most recent case study. So I'll fly through this. This is in partnership with the GovTech Accelerator at Creative HQ. We've been fortunate this year to be a rapid prototyping partner to the GovTech Accelerator and work with their government teams in rapid prototyping. Cool. So the SWAT project, which is the Smart Weed Alert tool in partnership with the Department of Conservation, it's about detecting new weeds early because that's a global problem. It's a platform of nationwide significance. $50 million per year is spent on fighting weeds. The overall cost to the environment is in the billions. This is a tool that can detect those weeds early and report on them to save hundreds of millions of dollars to the taxpayer. The platform can be open source, and it intends to be shared with other governments globally, and basically supported as an international platform because this problem hasn't been solved by any other open source community or any other government. But we hope to do that and then take it to the world as a leader in GovTech here in New Zealand. So the project was developed in under 70 developer hours. That's across 3 team members. It already has all the main features working: a user system, full CMS suite, rules and workflow engines, notification system and dynamic email templating, geospatial layering, complicated data entry modeling and import tools, front-end design layouts and site administration tools. This is a fully extendable to a national platform, which is the next phase of the project. But in under 70 hours in a few weeks, we were able to build the entire basis of it. And that was just $10,000 of development. Now, that's a small risk. It's a small investment in a local innovator. Compared to the RFP process, think about the value proposition. So that's what it looks like currently. It's a full working site, and you'll be hearing lots more about this at government conferences in the near future. That's me with my business partner Rox in Melbourne, running our Melbourne office. He and I do the RAB prototyping together because we enjoy it so much. And those are the stakeholders at DOC having a great time. I'm sorry for racing through that, but we got to the end, hopefully on time. I've got time for questions, but I can forego it if we're running late.
No, I've got questions. Yep.
Cool.
Two. So we can just crack straight into these.
Please.
Do you think we need more technologists as public service leaders?
Yes.
Sweet. We can get 3 and see. How do you see Māori tech innovation playing a part in our digital public service infrastructure in the future?
Several massive ways. I think whenever we're designing things in mind with Te Ao Māori, the end product is almost always better. It's more likely to bring the whole country on the same track. Aotearoa's culture is a unique one. We are bicultural, and so long as we're all sort of heading in the same direction together, then a solution's got a real chance of surviving. If it only looks after one community, it'll die a slow death. Plus, it's more relevant to the whole rest of the world because the problems that New Zealand has, especially when it comes to managing multiple cultures, are global issues. And when we build systems that look after all of our communities, that increases its relevance to the open source and global community.
Go on.
Sure.
Go on. As public servants, we can't do anything wrong. Risk tolerance or perception has to shift. Very short questions, please.
I just say absolutely, and that's the kind of the point I'm trying to make in terms of a real pragmatic takeaway of how the future could be different. I think we need to revisit our risk tolerance and what factors into how we assess those risks. Because right now we're doing things like wasting time and money, bypassing our local innovation sector. I put it all in here. I would say those are all highly risky things that we're doing to our future. And yet for some reason there aren't a whole bunch of alarms going off, going warning, warning, warning. There's better ways of doing things. Why aren't you doing them? So I think rewarding the public servants who do embrace the new generation of thinking, I got back to my slogan, and being a bit more aware of those alarms going off when those common failure modes are on the horizon. I think that would fundamentally lead us to a better place. It's what other governments did well 20 years ago. We need to invest in it now. So yes, you're correct.
Awesome. Thanks very much for your time.
All right, cheers. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Alex. RFP processes are like the bane of my life, and I spend way too much of my staff hours responding to things that I know I'll never get. And just interestingly, we spoke to a small IT provider who said they had 10 million turnover in the last year, and over 9 million of that is with Australian government, because he spends like 20% of his time getting those RFPs through and the rest of the time just getting it from New Zealand. So well understood.